Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Two Oceans Marathon Ultra podcast. This is something completely new. We've never done these before. You may have seen some of the Coach Parry Comrades related podcasts. This is something new we're trying. Really excited about the next 11 weeks. We're a week into this phase already. But the next 11 weeks where we're here to hold your hand, get you to running either your first ultra marathon or first ultra Two Oceans, or whether you are to try and knock a PB out on race day. We're here to guide you for the next 11 weeks, step by step, on everything related to the Two Oceans Ultra Marathon. I'm joined here by Shona Hendricks, colleague of mine here at CoachParry.com. She's a sports scientist and coach, part of our team. Shona's run 5 Two Oceans marathons herself. I like to call her a veteran of the race. Shona, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Dev. I don't know how grateful I am for that welcoming. I mean, I never get let go about my age, but yeah, you're catching up soon. You're catching up. So yeah, no, thanks for having me, Dev. Yeah.
Yes. Also, just to Shona's it's not just her 5 ultra. She will be running her 6th Two Oceans coming up soon. She's also done many international marathons as well. So Shona is well versed in marathon running and ultra marathon running, and is the perfect candidate or person to help us through every step of the way. Just a quick intro on myself. My name is Devlin, also a sports scientist and coach here at CoachParry.com. And I'm just going to be hosting. So Shona is going to be the expert telling us everything we need to know. I'm here to just kind of guide things and make sure things run smoothly. And to be quite honest, I'm here walking this journey with you. So this is going to be my first Two Oceans Ultra. So I'm learning along the way as you are. And yeah, really excited, as I said, for the next 11 weeks. Shona, I think before we get into this, just also would like to just let you know, if you have family or friends that are running the half marathon at Two Oceans, we do have a Two Oceans half marathon podcast running as well. So please feel free, check that out, share that with your friends and family, anyone that you do know who is running the half at Two Oceans. So now let's get stuck into the nitty gritties. Sean, as I mentioned, we're 11 weeks out from race day now. At this stage of our training, what should we be thinking about? Where should we be?
Yeah, so there's two sides to this, Dev, essentially, as one, if you have qualified already, and the other side is if you haven't, right? So if you haven't qualified just yet, your main focus now will be thinking about that qualifier and focusing on getting yourself qualified. So if you're new to Two Oceans, we are looking for a sub 5-hour marathon as a qualifying time. That's what you need to hit. And so if that's where you're at the moment and you haven't qualified, that's the number one priority on your mind. If you have already qualified, that it's put you in such a great position to now just really focus on some of the building blocks to get you over the next 11 weeks and building that endurance and that strength to get you over the next 56 kilometers in 11 weeks time. Let me just mention with that, though, is that we have essentially, if you haven't qualified, you have until March to do this, right? Just double check on the Two Oceans website when that qualifying criteria needs to be in. As far as I understand, it's on the 3rd of March. But yes, we have until March. So if you haven't qualified, you don't need to stress, right? It's not panic stations. You've got time, but that is really what we're focusing on now.
Cool. Sean, just very common question that we get, and I think around qualifying as well, is Comrades. So what if Comrades is ultimately your goal and you're throwing Two Oceans into the mix here? Or even vice versa. I mean, I know some people run Comrades just to say they can run Comrades, but Two Oceans actually ends up being their main goal. Where should you be, or what should you be thinking about now?
Yeah, I mean, excellent question, because, Comrades is obviously one of the biggest races in the country. Two Oceans is also, and it's one of the most phenomenal races in the country. And so, as you mentioned, people use Oceans very often as part of their long run training for Comrades. And so if that is your focus, if Comrades is your focus, you're going to be on a slightly different training cycle, right? You're going to be essentially focusing on that June as your main goal, and Oceans will essentially most likely be your longest run that you do in the build up to Comrades. As I'm sure you might know, we do also have a Comrades podcast. So tune in there for a little bit more detail on where you should be if that is your focus. But you also essentially need to make a call as if you want Comrades to be the priority or if you want Two Oceans to be the priority. I mean, I have friends and clients and athletes who have run Comrades and are going to run Comrades this year, but Oceans, as you mentioned, is their priority for this year. And so essentially that means that, as I mentioned, you'll be focusing on your qualifier or on Oceans specifically. The nice thing about Comrades and Oceans this year in comparison to last year is that they're about 8 to 9 weeks apart. So it does give a little bit more time, to perhaps run a slightly harder Oceans. I'm hesitant to say that because I do want people to, if they are running Comrades, to take care with their Oceans race. But essentially, if Oceans is your priority, it does give you a little bit more leeway to then be able to recover and then continue to build a little bit more to Comrades as well.
You talk about that time period between Oceans and Comrades, and it's something that I don't want people to say out too loud, because especially I know we're talking about Two Oceans here, but this week it was announced that the qualifying times have changed for Comrades, and all of a sudden I'm getting messages from everyone saying, because this is Oceans is going to be my first ultra, now suddenly everyone's like, you can run Oceans and Comrades, and I'm trying to just get everyone to calm down at the moment, one step at a time as we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Sean, so that's great. I mean, we know qualifying stuff, and we know what we need to be thinking about and the different sort of focused areas. But from a training point of view, where should we be? What should we be doing now, 11 weeks out from race day?
So a nice thing, I mean, it's not exactly the correct maths just because we're 1 week behind, but essentially 12 weeks to go would give us 3 really nice training blocks of 4 weeks. Okay, so that's quite a cool way to think about it. So essentially think about us now as if we're in our first 4-week block, right? So if you have qualified, let's take those people into account first. So if you have qualified, as I mentioned, you're focusing now on building your training, building your blocks of endurance, so that we're really just getting ourselves progressively stronger and stronger from an endurance perspective. You really don't want to be trying to hit all of those big progressions now. You've got 11 weeks. Guys, 11 weeks is a long time, right? And so if you're hitting big numbers now, you're almost doing yourself a bit of a disservice and perhaps putting yourself at a bit of risk for injury as well. And if you have qualified, I would really advocate against, trying to run another marathon to better your seeding. On race day, the way they've run, the way they start race since COVID, now it moves so quickly. With the what's the word I'm looking for, Dev? Sorry, like where they, the batches. Yeah, thank you. The batches are released every minute or every 90 seconds. And so you really are not going to get a massive benefit by trying to better your seeding. Okay, so I would really focusing on your training, because if you go and run a hard marathon, and this is what I don't think people always realize if they're trying for this better seeding, is that you require recovery time after that marathon because you've run it hard, which means you're missing out on training time. And I don't know about you, but we're 11 weeks out. I would far rather have an extra week of training than using that week as recovery post a marathon. Okay, so that's the key thing if you have already qualified. If you're still needing to qualify, as I mentioned, this is the important time. The focus now is about getting you qualified. All right. We need to obviously take into account a taper period for that qualifier, as well as a recovery period as well. So because you'll run that marathon, likely you'll run it hard. And so you do need to take that into account. A key thing here, and Lindsay always says this, and as we've learned from him, is that we ideally want you to qualify early so that you have more time for training. But it's really, really important that you qualify when you are ready. So don't push that too soon. Don't try and qualify in the next 3 weeks if you're not ready to do that, just because I said it's a good idea to qualify early. Rather, make sure you qualify when you are ready.
Yeah, and I'm personally, from personal experience, I'm pushing the envelope here a little bit, and I'm going to be leaving my qualifier to the last possible weekend that I can qualify before submission or submitting that information. So yeah, I think a really key point that you said there is when you are ready. I definitely don't think I'm going to be ready for a qualifier in the next couple of weeks. So trying to push that, if it means pushing it later, then so be it. When you're ready, again, you don't want to get to a point where you're trying to force it now, you're having to recover quickly, and then potentially risk missing that qualifier and having to try and find another qualifier, because now we're throwing in 2 marathons at a higher intensity, which is, as you said, even more training that we're losing instead of focusing on some quality training there.
Yeah, David, sorry, if I could just elaborate a little bit on that, because you're spot on, and I'm in the same boat as you. I'm going to push my qualifier to the latest point possible, mostly because I had quite a bad injury last year. I had a hairline fracture of my patella, and so it pushed my running back. And so, thinking about what you should be doing now, I just want to maybe reiterate that if you had a lazy December, or if you were just like me, I mean, I had a lazy December, but I had that injury. Just remember that jumping into too much training now is also going to be bad for you. So rather stay consistent, build little blocks progressively, as opposed to just jumping in and going balls to the wall, because we were now freaking out that we've got 11 weeks. Okay, so yes, you've got time. Rather, the consistency of starting slowly and building on that is more important than trying to just go out and hit some long runs straight away.
Yeah, and great points. I love that consistency point there. That's, again, something I'm learning, and obviously but I'm feeling it more and more, is just how my running's changing with just being a little bit more consistent week in and week out as well. Shona, I think taking it now a step further, when we're getting into the nuts and bolts of what we should be doing and where we should be at the moment, question that often comes up at this phase is, well, what exactly should I be doing? So what should my weeks look like? How much of what should I be doing? How many times a week? Do you want to maybe just dive into that in a little bit more detail for us?
If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury-free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsay and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K, and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, definitely. And we have this common joke there. I know between the two of us as sports scientists, the answer is always it depends. Okay, and it does. But let me give you the broad sort of strokes for now. So ideally, if you are a recreational runner and you're aiming for a finish at Oceans, a sub-6, and maybe 5.5. For the most part, I like my clients who are running those times to be running 4 times a week. Okay, if you are running faster than that and you're looking to go for the Sainsbury medals and so on, then yes, you might be running perhaps 5 times a week. And of course, if you're more elite than that, yeah, perhaps 6 times a week. Okay, so that depends on that spectrum in terms of what sort of level of runner you are. So yeah, 4 times a week predominantly. I know we're going to touch on some strength work in a little bit as well, but we are massive advocates of strength training. So I would definitely advocate at least once a week of strength work in there. We can talk about cross training, and I know later episodes are going to include some cross training ideas. But really, really important is I like you to have at least 1 full day of rest a week as well. So, and I know that's a dirty word in many runners' dictionaries, but yes, 4 times a week is really what we're looking at from a running point of view.
Sure. So of the 4 times, I know you've spoken some easy runs and those sort of things, but at this phase of training, so I mean, regardless of sort of where we are and what we're focusing on, should we be doing any interval work? So hill type sessions, speed type sessions, is that something we need to be focusing on now?
Excellent question. And sorry, I actually should have elaborated a little bit more on that. So of those 4 runs, essentially, we like to work on what we call like an 80-20 or polarized system, right? So predominantly your runs are easy and long runs, and a small portion of those, so 20%, is what would normally be a higher intensity or interval sort of run. So should you be doing those interval runs now? Again, it depends. And I'm going to put it down to, if you had a lazy December and you are really just coming back, I would put those interval runs to the side at the moment, and I'd only focus on the easy and the long runs, just to build your engine a little bit before you start building the turbo almost. Okay, so let's get that engine built as opposed to hitting on the turbo, so we can drive Dev's car as opposed to my one liter engine with a turbo. We want to build the engine up first. So if you had a lazy December and that would be the focus. If you train through and you've already qualified, yes, it could be a good idea to start adding in a couple of interval sessions, not a couple, perhaps one, depending on your level, maybe two, if you are a much faster Sainsbury sort of medal runner. And again, if you have qualified, that's a great time now to then you can really just focus on building the base blocks of endurance and speed into your plan. If you haven't qualified, yes, we can still look at adding in some speed work as well. But again, depending on what you've come from, so your base of training coming into that. And yes, we do want to look at some hills. I mean, Two Oceans is a hilly race, and we will go into the route at a later stage and what that looks like. But you are going to be fighting Chappies or little Chappies, false Chappies, Chappies itself, and of course Constantia Nek, and then after Constantia Nek, lots of other aspects. So yes, we do want to start adding in some hill repeats. Not necessarily right now, I would say in this block, that wouldn't be my focus, but perhaps definitely moving into the next block of training for sure.
You touched on strength training earlier on, and I know like when we're talking about hills and that being a really good kind of strength component to our running, but I want to just kind of dive into this, the importance of strength training, and I know you said we should be focusing on it now, but why? Like what actually is it about strength that makes it so important for something like Two Oceans Ultra?
Yeah, and at the risk of getting people to listen, not to listen to this podcast, I know, but we carry on about strength training all the time, but and for not sounding like broken records, but really because guys, it is just so beneficial, and there's two main aspects as to why. So the first one is that it's going to keep you injury free. Okay, so running it's a compounding cyclic sport. It's the same movements over and over and over again. And so we need to ensure that we're making our bodies and our joints and our muscles and our ligaments all around those joints strong enough to sustain those loads, especially when we're going to start picking up the volume or the mileage as we're going into our running blocks. So now is the time to be focusing on strength work so that we're getting ourselves strong enough that when we're going to run heavier volumes or higher volumes of running, we're strong enough to sustain those. Okay, so that's the first thing. When I spoke about the consistency earlier, the magic of endurance training comes when we're consistent. And if we're injured, we lose blocks of training. So we want to ensure that we stay injury free. Okay. And strength training is the main way that's going to help you do that. The second thing that strength training is amazing for, why we advocate so much for it, is it's going to benefit your running. It's going to make you a better runner without you having to run. Okay. So what it does is it changes your running economy. It improves your running economy. And think about I don't know why all my analogies today have got to do with cars. I know very little about cars, but okay. So think about running economy as the fuel economy of your car, right? And I mean, in South Africa, fuel isn't exactly cheap. So we want to try and get the most distance and probably the most speed that we can for the least amounts of fuel. And so running economy works the same way. We want to be able to go as far as we can and as fast as we can, utilizing the least amount of fuel in our bodies or that we take in. And strength training helps your running economy get better by about 4 to 6%. Guys, that's like jam for free, right? I don't know what that saying is, but yes, like money for jam, whatever it is. But you're getting to become a better runner just by doing something that isn't running. And I know you guys are not a fan of it, and we'll go into a little bit of the details as to what. But lastly, from a performance perspective, so injury prevention and performance, those are the two aspects, right? So you're going to become a better runner from a performance point of view, but also for a race like Two Oceans, guys, you are going to need that strength to help get you up the hills. So both Chapman's Peak and Constantia Nek, but really, really important is down Chapman's Peak as well, because running down Chappies, your muscles are working slightly differently, right? So we can go into the details as to concentric versus eccentric muscle contractions, but just so you know that every time we land on the ground, your muscles they're contracting, but they're elongating, so that they're extending apart, and that causes a lot of damage. And so if you are not strong enough to run down Chapman's Peak with enough strength, you are really going to hurt climbing Constantia Nek thereafter. So we need to make sure that you're strong enough for the route, aside from just the 56 Ks, but for the amount of climbing that you're also going to be doing. You're smiling, Dev. I'm not sure if you're scared or excited.
A bit of both, to be quite honest. I mean, I enjoy the strength training component, and I mean, it's obviously something that we advocate for massively. And I know you mentioned earlier, people might turn off the minute we start mentioning strength, and they stop listening. And it's very often the first thing to go out the window when people either don't have enough time. But strength training, Sean, we're not really talking about going to a gym necessarily. I mean, I know people get a little bit sort of overwhelmed by gyms and a bit put off by that. What are we talking about strength training? So what do we mean by that? And maybe like 1 or 2 examples of the kind of stuff people should be doing at this stage.
Perfect. Yeah, Dev, I mean, gyms can be intimidating. They're also an extra expense. You know, running is supposed to be a cheap sport, but it's not. And so we don't necessarily want to have gyms as an extra expense. And so we're not saying that you have to go to a gym. We're also not saying that you mustn't go to a gym. But really, the stuff that you can be doing is stuff that you can do at home. We're talking about resistance training. Okay, so it's pushing your body against a form of resistance, and really body weight training. So body weight squats, as an example, is resistance training because you're pushing your own body weight against gravity. And so there's a lot of that sort of work that you can do at home. We want to work on the prime movers for running. So your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, your calves, a little bit of posture aspect as well, because that's going to make you a better runner. But then, of course, we want to work on the smaller stabilizing muscles to help keep you injury free. So that would be the muscles in and around the core. Guys, the core isn't just the abdominals, it's your entire trunk that surrounds the spine. A little bit to do with the glutes because they are also stabilizers for the pelvis. We also want to work on some foot exercises as well because those are stabilizers of the feet, right? And we don't often think about that. So squats, deadlifts, and of course we want to make sure we're using the right technique with these things. Step ups, step downs are really good for that eccentric action that I was talking about. Those are all really, really good exercises. Calf raises, there's tons of stuff that we can do, but also it really is about how we do it and the technique that we use. But yeah, it doesn't have to be in a gym. Of course, once you get a little bit stronger body weight, you can start adding in some bands. You can, use some stuff at home. Brooms, you mentioned previously, like using broomsticks and bricks and stuff at home. It doesn't have to be fancy equipment. And of course, as we progress, we can make that load a little bit more and a little bit more.
Awesome. Yeah, Sean, I mean, I know you touched on the strength for hills and stuff, but I know Two Oceans in particular, the route can be a very challenging route in terms of just the road surface as well. Confirm just like around the strength training and the need for strength training. I know the camber is also an issue on race day. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, one of the other things that I actually didn't mention with strength training is it also helps delay fatigue, endurance fatigue. So the stronger you are, the more endurance you have, the less fatigue you feel. And the camber of the hills at Oceans is really the way I've found it to be the worst is at the top of Constantia Nek, right? So that's at like 49, 50 Ks. You've already run a lot and you've hit Constantia Nek, and now you've got this camber to deal with. And so it'd be really good to make sure that you're strong enough to delay that fatigue so that you can then manage that camber a little bit better. I've run a couple of these, and I remember one of my worst Oceans was when I was shattered at the top and that camber just absolutely killed me. So we want to make sure that we're strong enough to get up and over Chappies, up and over. As I mentioned, that eccentric portion is really important, that we don't break our legs before Constantia Nek, and we want to be able to get up Constantia Nek, and we want them to be able to delay that fatigue on those cambers as we're coming into the finish as well.
Yeah, Sean, lots to take in here. I mean, we 11 weeks out, and as I'm listening to it, and I know all the stuff, and I know how to prepare for this, but as I'm sitting listening to it, there's little bits of me that are going, why am I doing this to myself? But yeah, really looking forward to the next 11 weeks and really being there for you as the listener, whether, like I said, it's your first Two Oceans Ultra, or whether you're going out to try and smash your 6th or 7th, maybe getting that permanent number. We're here to hold your hand the whole way through. So please drop some questions into the comments. We'll hopefully somewhere along the line be able to maybe answer 1 or 2 of those questions. Hopefully the content in these podcasts will already be asking those questions. There's great information to come. We spoke about nutrition and strength training and all that. there's a lot more to come in future episodes. So please do stick around. As I said, we've got the half marathon, the Two Oceans half marathon podcast running as well. So if you do have friends and family, colleagues at work that might be running that, get them listening to that podcast, check it out. You're obviously welcome to listen to it yourselves as well. But yeah, we're really looking forward to the journey with you. I'm looking forward to kind of taking in the nuggets and being part and properly immersed in this as well from a personal experience. I know Shona's run a couple. This to her, she does in her sleep almost. But Shona, just kind of as we're signing out, any parting shots from you? Anything that, like, if there's a lot of information here, but if there's one thing to take home, what would that be from your side?
Yeah, guys, just don't panic. 11 weeks doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it is. It is a lot of time, and you've got enough time. And if you haven't qualified, don't panic. Focus on what you can do today. Don't think about, what's happening in 7-8 weeks time. Focus on today. Focus on getting that session done. Focus on being consistent. That's the key thing that I want to leave you with, is just don't panic. Don't try and cram everything in, because you're just going to make yourself injured. Less is more in this situation, and just try and be consistent every single day as you go along.
Awesome. Shona, thanks for your time. Again, guys, check us out in future podcasts. Looking forward to being here with you. And yeah, looking forward to the next 11 weeks. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.